5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Puck short.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the One Puck Short podcast. It is Tuesday the 24th of November and I am your host Ron McGregor. NCAA analyst Dave Starman will be joining me later in the show to talk about the Friendship 4 tournament in Belfast this weekend, as well as some other breaking news from the college hockey world. And a couple of news and notes from the NHL first. I see Montreal have risen back, or shall I say, retained their place at the top of the standings, tied with the New York Rangers on points, 34 each. The Rangers on a they were on a 9-game winning streak. They lost to Tampa Bay the other night, so they're in 9-1-0 in their last 10. They've been extremely impressive. 10-1-1 at home. The Habs are 9-2-1 at home. Both these clubs have made such great starts to the year. Getting Carey Price back is pretty much the equivalent of making a big trade, I think, for the Habs. But General Manager Mark McGavin is rumoured to be working the phones, as they say, trying to add to the team. Brendan Gallagher's out for about 6 weeks with a surgery on 2 broken fingers, which he sustained in the game against the New York Islanders at the weekend. He got hit by a Johnny Boychuk slap shot, which I could assure you nobody wants to do, including the goalie. So there is a hole there. Alex Owen hasn't maybe worked out quite as the Habs hoped. I think he's been unfairly maligned, target for unfair criticism on occasions. He's only on a 1-year deal, $1.1 million, and for that kind of money, you can take a chance on him, but Michel Therrien can be a hard coach sometimes, so perhaps not that surprising that he has sat out on a couple of occasions. As for the Rangers, Henrik Lundqvist has been a superb form. For those of you who read my weekly Vezina Watch piece on In Goal magazine, you'll have noticed he's been number 1 in the rankings for 3 weeks in a row now. He's been superb for the Rangers, who are playing okay. I think a lot of people are in agreement they haven't found their high gear yet, which is a scary, scary thought, really. Capitals also play very well just behind the Rangers in the Metropolitan. Pittsburgh somehow keep it going. Their offense still hasn't clicked. We talked about this in last week's podcast. Still struggling to find their gear offensively, but the defense has held up better than a lot of people expected. Boston are also finding some form of late. Tuukka Rask, it looks more like Tuukka Rask. They acquired Landon Ferraro via waivers from the Detroit Red Wings. Kind of a nice moment in last night's game where his father, Ray Ferraro, got to interview him. But that's a nice little ad for the Bruins, who pre-season, a lot of people wondered what was going on. Obviously, there was the trades with Dougie Hamilton and Lucic, and people kind of wondered if this might be the beginning of the end for the Bruins. I have to admit I was one of those people, but they're doing pretty well right now. Whether they can hold on with the Islanders and the Lightning snapping at their heels, Florida has still got a ways to go and some good players there, especially if Rodrigo Luongo keeps his form up. So whether the Bruins can sustain it, I guess that may depend how well certain players like Zdeno Chara play and whether they stay healthy, and also whether Tuukka Rask can keep this high level of play up. Moving west, the Dallas Stars continue to roll. Extremely impressive through the opening quarter of the season. 34 points. They lead the Central and the Conference. They've won 5 in a row. Niemi Lieutenant, which was a question mark for a lot of people going into the season, wondering how this sort of two-headed monster would work out. They've done extremely well. They've been playing well. They've been giving them the goaltending they didn't get last year. Niemi is Niemi. I think he's a target of unfair criticism a lot of the time. You know what you're going to get with Anthony Niemi, and that's what the Dallas Stars are getting right now. Nashville, on the other hand, have lost 3 in a row and they've been shut out 3 games in a row. I speculated on the blog earlier today whether the Islanders might try to initiate a 3-way trade. Obviously, we talked on last week's show about the Travis Hamonic situation. His preference is to go to Western Canada, so Winnipeg, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. There are reports that the Canucks aren't in on talks over Hamonic. They're not interested, but the list may expand to Colorado and Minnesota. So if you drag in maybe the Predators, the Islanders look at someone like Ryan Ellis. This is the guy I focused on the blog earlier today, that he's perhaps not a definite like-for-like swap for Hamonic in terms of Hamonic's a little bit more defensive-minded and Ellis is a little bit more offensively-minded, but it's a pretty close match. He's a guy who can play in all situations for the Islanders. And if you could make a 3-way trade here, the Islanders could move Hamonic for a forward, and then that forward could be moved to the Predators, because they need some help. But the big kicker here is they need help down the middle. And there aren't an awful lot of good quality centres available, even if Travis Hamonic is going back the other way. We mentioned the Jets a moment ago in the Hamonic talk. Andrei Pavlich is hurt. Connor Hellebuck's been called up. Interesting chance, good chance, top prospect between the pipes, Connor Hellebuck. And how he fares will be of great interest to Jets fans and great interest to a lot of people around the league. Obviously, Pavlich is, again, the target of a lot of criticism. And he had a good year last year, had a decent start, but he's fallen away. Some people think this is a blessing in disguise for Winnipeg, especially as they are now falling outside of the wildcard spots in a very difficult Central Division. So, going to be interesting to see what they do. The San Jose Sharks are on a 6-game winning streak, no less. They had Danis Zubris on a 1-year, 2-way deal. That's a nice depth pickup for Puck Daddy. For the San Jose. Sorry, I was reading the Puck Daddy article on the signing because it broke while I was recording earlier on. So they've added Danis Zubris to the roster. As I said, nice depth pickup for the Sharks there, who are playing some good hockey right now. And I wasn't sure quite how they would fare this season, but people said, Pete DeBoer has this effect on teams. In the first year he's there, you look at the Devils, the Panthers, there's always a spike under Pete DeBoer. Sure enough, we're seeing it in San Jose. Whether it lasts, I guess that depends on whether they actually keep a hold of Patrick Marleau, who I think they would be crazy to trade right now, given that the team's playing so well, unless they got a seriously significant return. And I can't imagine what they would be able to get back from the Rangers, for example, say, because I can't see the Sharks trading him to the Kings. So what would they be able to get back from the Rangers, which would make them genuinely better? I'm struggling to think, because I just can't see the Rangers wanting to part with too much, which would harm their cup hopes. Off-ice notes just to share as well, the New York Rangers have been declared as the most valuable franchise in the NHL now. I know a lot of people are surprised. The Toronto Maple Leafs have kind of dominated this list for, well, as long as a lot of people can remember, but Forbes have put the Rangers at the top of the list. They are up 9% from last year, all the way to $1.2 billion. The Leafs' value apparently fell by 12%, down to 1.15. Montreal Canadiens climbed to 1.18 billion, so that puts them into second. I know a few people made Canada's team jokes at this point, which seemed a little lazy, I've got to be honest. There's a local TV deal playing heavily into that from all reports. The Bruins and Chicago also doing quite well. The Bruins worth $750 million, and the Blackhawks now worth $930 million, which is interesting given what a poor state they were in not that long ago, really. And, you go back 10 years, maybe a little bit more, and they were a team that a lot of locals didn't really watch. There was no local TV deal. There was, I don't say no hope, but there were points when the team was almost a non-entity in the NHL at times. And look at them now. They're perennial cup contenders every year, and they've got some of the biggest stars in the game. And they've also unveiled their Stadium Series jersey. They take on the Wild later this season, and I don't hate either set of jerseys. The Blackhawk ones are okay. They're okay. The Minnesota Wild ones are okay. And I think that's the first time I've had a very middle-of-the-road view on a Stadium Series or Winter Classic jersey. I've tended to either love them or hate them. These are just a little bit, I sort of said bland. That's not fair, but maybe that is the right word. Maybe I'm just burnt out on Stadium Series jerseys now. Maybe this is the thing. I ranted about British hockey needing to step up the special jersey game. Maybe the NHL now needs to follow suit and step its game up on the special jersey front. One Puck Short is brought to you in association with Eastside Hockey Manager, an in-depth ice hockey management simulation brought to you by Sports Interactive and Sega, developers of the world-famous Football Manager series, coming soon for PC via Steam. Joining me now on the One Puck Short podcast is an NCAA hockey analyst for ESPNU and CBSSN. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Dave Starman. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining me today. This weekend, the Friendship 4 tournament takes place in Belfast, which is why I've got you on today. As I said, you're an NCAA analyst. They're competing for the Belpot Trophy. The Giants organisation in Belfast is working on University of Massachusetts Lowell, Northeastern University, Brown and Colgate University. It's set to be quite an exciting tournament, I think, Dave.
Anytime I think you get four teams together like that, you're going to get pretty good hockey. And these are four programs that have some history to them, and there are also four programs that are trending in the right direction. I've had the chance to see Northeastern a couple times, and they're a team that likes to move the puck, and they've got an explosive player in Kevin Roy, who's a draft choice of the Anaheim Ducks. And I think that with the way Northeastern plays and the up-tempo style they like to play, there's a program certainly to keep an eye on. They've got some nice talent on their team.
Yeah, I mean, they've struggled out of the gate a little bit, but they've been playing some good hockey from what I've seen. But UMass Lowell right now seems to be one of the hottest teams in NCAA.
The one thing that Lowell is, they are very, very well coached by Normie Bazin, and they're playing a nice structure. And, sometimes people complain that they're over-structured, but I think that when Norm took the team over, he took it over in a rebuilding situation, and the structure that he brought, accompanied by the talent that he has, was the way that Lowell was able to be successful when he first took over. And, my feeling always is, if it works, then why stop doing it? So, Norm knows how to recruit. He recruits players that fit his program. He's got 2 or 3 defensemen that really can get into the play. He's done a nice job replacing Connor Hellebuck, his goalie, who's now in the NHL with the Winnipeg Jets. And, the one thing that Lowell can do, they can get pucks in, they can cycle pucks, they can manufacture chances at the net. They're a fun team to watch because of how systematic they are, and they stay disciplined, and they don't beat themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned replacing Connor Hellebuck there. Kevin Boyle's had a great year between the pipes for Lowell.
It's the funny thing is goaltending in the NCAA. It's kind of like feast or famine. There's 10 or 15 programs that are, have got goalies that are really, really good, and then everybody else kind of struggles to find them. And what we've been talking about a lot here in the U.S. is becoming more of a goaltending factory and trying to improve the way that we develop our goalies. The Finns have really taken the lead on developing elite level goalies, and the U.S. and Canada, I think, have really started to rethink from the youngest levels, 10 years old and up, how they're going to develop their goalies and how they encourage kids to play goal, and some of the methodology going into the off-ice and on-ice component, and especially the age-specific component of developing goalies. And I just think that, you take the NCAA is kind of a perfect example. It's a microcosm sometimes of what we're seeing goaltender development-wise, because of the fact that you've got these 10 or 11 really elite goalies in the NCAA, and then you got a bunch of guys who are pretty good, but they're certainly not at that top level.
I mean, to deviate slightly, obviously you mentioned there's kind of feast or famine maybe. Thatcher Demko at Boston College is quite a highly touted prospect, a Vancouver Canucks pick. Of course, Matt O'Connor of Boston University last year, Ryan Miller, perhaps one of the more famous NCAA alumni. There's certainly been some standout goaltending developing in the college system.
Oh, there certainly has, and you could go all the way back to Ken Dryden in the early, late '60s with Cornell and the national championship that he won there, and moving through into the '70s and the '80s and the '90s straight up through now, and the NCAA has produced its share of pretty good goaltenders. You mentioned Ryan Miller, who's gone on to have a stellar career, and it's funny when Ryan Miller won the Hobey Baker Award, the given to the top player in college hockey. He kind of killed it for every goalie behind him in a good way, because his numbers were so good. And I remember the years that I was on the Hobey Baker committee, everybody that came through that was a candidate to win the Hobey Baker that was a goalie, the first thing that came up was, well, he doesn't have Ryan Miller's numbers. Miller's numbers that year, especially in that era, were so off the charts good that it's hard to compare some of today's goalies with those numbers to what Ryan Miller did. So, like, we always joke about how Ryan Miller kind of ruined it for every other goalie trying to win the Hobey Baker because of the stats that he put up. But, you are seeing some pretty good goalies coming out of the NCAA. Cam Talbot wrote a nice story last year as the backup to Henrik Lundqvist, and, was able to hold the fort when Lundqvist got hurt, and he's now the number one in Edmonton. You look at Mike Condon in Montreal, Carey Price gets hurt, and Mike Condon was a free agent signing out of Princeton. Condon's been able to do a really good job. Andrew Hammond came out of Bowling Green, and last year single-handedly got the Ottawa Senators into the playoffs. So, the North American Hockey League, which is one of the junior A hockey leagues here in the U.S., has done a really good job of becoming kind of a goaltending factory. And you've seen some of these guys come up through the ranks and through the NCAA ranks, whether drafted or undrafted, and have an impact. And, John Gillies, Thatcher Demko, those are just, two of the future stars in the NHL.
Yeah, sure. To come back to the Belpot Trophy, we've got obviously Brown University and Colgate as well. What can people expect from Brown in particular?
Brown is a feisty, physical, playing with a ton of hate type of team. I mean, they just seem to get on the ice and are aggravated, and it works for them. They play an aggressive style. They go to the net hard. They move pucks. They shoot like crazy when they can. They've been a team that's been a little underskilled as of late, but they make up for it in work ethic, and they've pulled off some upsets in the past couple of years. And Colgate's a team that has transformed itself. It was a kind of an offensive-minded group. Then they became a little bit more defensive minded in the last 4 or 5 years, and now, with the Spink brothers, they all of a sudden kind of relaunched themselves into more of an offensive type of team. And Donnie Vaughn was a really good offensive player when he was younger, and now he is the type of coach that really wants to get the wheel moving and keep players going and cycling and offensive attack options. And he's just one of those guys that likes to really push the envelope with speed. So I think you're going to see a lot of that when you see Colgate play.
You mentioned the Spink brothers there. Tyson Spink has 6 goals and 12 points in 13 games this year. His brother Tyler is also a name that comes up whenever you talk about Colgate hockey. Twins, obviously. One way is 8, one way is 18. These guys seem to have a major impact on the way Colgate play at the moment.
Oh, there's no question. And the funny thing about it is that, whoever their line mate is almost becomes like a triplet. It's amazing how they bring in whoever's going to play with them, and they kind of assimilate into that same type of style that they play. And, here's the thing you're going to see with them. First of all, they've got skill, and they don't need a lot of room to make plays. And so one of them gets a puck in a corner, can chip it to the brother, move it up the wall real quick, and if they get pressed, if they get pressured, they're able to use their bodies well to protect pucks, spin off of checks, and then get pucks to the front of the net. So, they've got skating ability, they've got pretty good hands, they're not afraid, which is huge. I mean, they'll take a hit to make a play, but they've got this uncanny ability to not get hit a lot, and I think that's why, whether it be the opening 10 minutes or the closing 10 minutes, they're very, very effective players.
If you had to pick a winner this weekend, I think a lot of people would probably back Lowell, given the start they've had. They're one of the top-rated college teams in the country right now. Do you consider them to be favourites heading into the tournament?
I think Lowell probably would. I mean, they've probably got more big game experience in some of their key guys than some of the other programs. Though on the other hand, I think when you take teams out of their comfort zone, it becomes anybody's ball game. That's why you sometimes see a lot of the upsets in the NCAA tournament. You take a team that's been really, really good, either in its home rink or really good in conference play, and you put them in a unfamiliar setting against unfamiliar teams, and then it becomes a matter of who handles momentum swings on a bad break or a lousy call or a strange goal. And so it's hard to identify kind of who's got the clear cut advantage. But I would say of the 4 teams that are there, Lowell top to bottom has probably got the most big game experience and probably the deepest roster.
We talked a little bit about some of the big names that have come out of the NCAA. Obviously, Jack Eichel was arguably the biggest, perhaps. Certainly last year, he got a lot of press coverage heading into the draft. Do you feel the stature of college hockey has risen over recent years? It certainly seems to be more prominent. Maybe that's the rise of the internet and websites like College Hockey News. It's on TV over here. The Frozen Four's on every year. Do you feel the college game is getting more attention than it used to now?
I would think so. Tom Anastas, who's the head coach of Michigan State, he used to be the commissioner of the now defunct CCHA. And when he took over the CCHA, he said, we used to have 7 TV games on a year that were broadcasted by Fox Sports Detroit. By the time he left the CCHA, there were times where he would have 7 games on in a weekend. And I think you see the explosion, of what the impact of the product and a TV market that wants to watch it. And you've also got a lot of regional sports networks that need programming. You've got some national cable outlets like ours, whether it be CBS Sports Network or ESPNU or the Big Ten Network, NBC Sports Network. You've got some outlets that have got some windows where they can promote a product, and college hockey has become a good product to promote. And the fact that I think it's now 58% of National Hockey League players that weren't drafted came out of college hockey. 33% of the NHL in total comes out of college hockey. So you're looking at a really good development system for future NHL players. And as well as I do, if people get a chance to watch players that eventually could wind up playing for their team at the major league level, they're going to pay attention to who those players are. And to me, that's why the World Junior Tournament's been a big success. It's why college hockey's been a big success. And you bring up a great point, and that is the explosion of the internet and websites, whether it be USCHO or College Hockey News or USA Hockey does a tremendous job promoting college hockey here in the U.S. So, I just think that between social media and TV and the fact that the product's a good product, you're seeing college hockey continue to explode.
I mean, you and I spoke earlier before we went on air, and I'm quite new to college hockey. We've my day job, we've got an office in East Lansing, so I've kind of been adopted as an honorary Spartan by colleagues over there. And to me, it seems like they've got a pretty good thing going right now. There's some good parity in the league. The on-ice product is good. As we've just said, that the profile of the NCAA is rising. But some news broke earlier today, which has proved to be quite controversial, that the Big Ten want to adjust the age limit for incoming recruits from 21 to 20. Now, this seems like quite a small change perhaps on paper, but the ramifications for the league are quite big. Can you explain for the people at home who don't follow the age limitations and the eligibility of the NCAA what impact this might actually have?
Well, I think when you take a look at the last three national championships, let's take a look at Union College and Yale and specifically. They had teams that had some older players on it. They had teams that, where you had a player that came in as a 21-year-old freshman. Now, in the United States and in Canada, you can play junior hockey until age 20. You can turn 21 while you're playing at some levels of junior hockey. So what some kids will do is they'll play junior hockey until they lose or until they age out and then go to college. It gives them time to develop. Those are kids that are kind of late bloomers that were looked over, when they were 18, 19, and even 20. So what the Big Ten wants to do is they want to even the playing field in a way by not allowing some of these smaller schools like a Union, like a Yale, like a Ferris State, like a Minnesota State, to bring in that 21-year-old freshman that can now play 4 years and finish his career at 25.
Yeah.
They want to bring that up a little bit more to keep the age discrepancy, because what the Big Ten programs do, and it's more Minnesota and Michigan and to an extent Wisconsin, they will bring in that true freshman, that 18-year-old freshman, whether out of the USHL or the National Team Development Program, and that player will come in, let's say, as an 18-year-old freshman, and that 18-year-old can wind up playing against a 25-year-old senior. And a lot of those blue-chip younger freshman players don't make it past their sophomore year. They turn pro because they've already been drafted.
Yeah.
So in an attempt to compete, it's funny, an attempt for the big boys to compete with the small boys, what the Big Ten wants to do is kind of dig into their ability to recruit those older, kind of more sophisticated, more savvy player as a senior, and therefore they can compensate for losing a lot of their blue chippers along the way.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting setup because obviously the Big Ten have the ability to propose legislation directly to the NCAA because they're the only all-sports conference, as they call it. They seem to have blindsided a lot of other teams with this move, though, because some, from what I'm reading, seem to be completely unaware of the proposal, or they've already voiced concerns against it, but the Big Ten have gone through with it anyway.
And, here's the thing. It's a continuation of a lot of things that get discussed at the annual coaches convention in Naples, Florida in April when all the college coaches get together, and they discuss a lot of things, whether it be recruiting and verbal commitments and these type of age situations and rule changes to the game. And, the one thing that always becomes clear is there's certainly a distinct faction of coaches and programs that believe one way, and there's a certain faction of coaches that believe another way. And I think that, every time something along these lines comes up, you start to see, kind of the I don't want to say the right fighters, it's the wrong word, but you're starting to see the guys that are passionate about their way of doing things lining up with each other, and it's usually a bigger minority of the have-nots against kind of the smaller minority of the haves. And, I think I saw the story, there was a poll taken that it was 49-11 against this proposal of all the coaches kind of straw polled in college hockey. And, it's funny because there are probably only 11 or 12 programs that benefit. They lost me for a second there.
We lost you, yeah. So we were talking about the kind of the haves and the have-nots in the college game.
Right. So what happens a lot of times is, you start to see these two factions line up against each other, and there's probably only 12 programs that really can take advantage of bringing in those drafted players, those blue-chip prospects, those guys that got taken in the first or second round of the draft. And because they're in the minority, I think this could struggle to pass. But on the other hand, what the Big Ten does bring to college hockey in a positive way is it gives college hockey a seat at the table at the annual NCAA meetings because they're an all-sports conference. But the one thing that they've got to realize is, they bring this wonderful opportunity for all of college hockey to be heard at the national sports level for college athletics. They can't take advantage of it and use it to their own, use it for their own advantage, because if they do that, then it sort of negates the beauty of what should be a Big Ten conference that helps out college hockey as a whole. Yeah. I think that's where you start to get into some danger areas.
Yeah, so they're using it to their own ends rather than for the good of the wider game.
Right.
Right. It's only a strange one, as I said. It's created a lot of controversy a lot of people have seen it as kind of a way for the Big Ten to maybe claw back, as you said, or dig into the advantage a few of the others have maybe tapped into with slightly older players. It's a strange situation, as we said at the top, because the product is doing so well and advancing so well. Where do you see the future of college hockey going? Obviously, do you see more tournaments abroad like the one in Belfast this weekend, or more expansion perhaps into other areas in the US and trying to grow the game in some of what are currently some of the smaller markets?
It's a great question. We talk a lot about can we annex more programs? Can we get some of the bigger name schools that are in the U.S. that are brand name schools to get college hockey into their programs? Can we get USC or UCLA? Can we get Alabama or Georgia? Can we get some of those schools that attract eyeball? Can we get Texas or Oklahoma? I mean, can we? So I mean, those are some of the programs that people will throw their names out just because of the fact that they've kind of got that brand name on a national level. There's also been talk about, are there Canadian colleges that we can annex into the NCAA and make part of NCAA hockey and have them play by NCAA rules? The University of British Columbia was always mentioned as a possible candidate to want to join the NCAA and play back in the old WCHA when it was in its original form. So, I mean, that has been discussed. The other thing is when it comes to the overseas tournaments, I think for the experience of the student athlete, that's a great idea. Now the thing is, do you start to put tournaments in the area where you can actively recruit players? There have been a lot of Finns that have come over and played college hockey. So, do you put a tournament in Helsinki, where the World Junior Tournament's going to be this year?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a thought of do you play some tournaments in Canada? Do you play a couple of tournaments in Europe? I mean, that to me is probably the next step for college hockey, and that is start to advertise and market yourself in the areas where you know that you're going to be able to grab players and bring them back with you.
I mean, is that something colleges are actively doing more and more of, looking to Europe, Finland, Sweden, other parts of Europe to find their next recruits?
I don't know if they're investing a ton of time in doing it. I think once you have a pipeline into one area, it helps. Like St. Cloud State got a pipeline into this one area of Finland. One player came over, and it's kind of opened the doors, and they managed to bring 3 or 4 more in. So I think that's helped them out. There have been a couple of other schools that have been able to tap into some areas, in Europe, where in the Scandinavian countries, where they've been able to bring in a couple of guys. Major junior hockey in Canada has been able to sort of tap into the Eastern European market quite a bit. So, I think it's kind of once you establish your pipeline, it helps. But I mean, the other thing, again, it goes back to your recruiting budget, and it goes back to who you are. University of Michigan has a ton of money if they want to go run around Finland and see if they can find a couple of players, whereas Ferris State doesn't.
Yeah.
So you still get back into that same market. For Ferris State, it's, hey, can we comb the state of Michigan? Can we go through the North American Hockey League? And what do we got in Southern Ontario? You know what I mean? So I think each school will continue to recruit where, part of its geography and then part of its budget.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out to join me today, Dave. Where can people find you online and so forth?
Twitter handle is @DStarmanHockey, and usually on a game week that we do for CBS, we put up a nice little game preview on College Hockey News.
Perfect. Thanks again for joining me, Dave. Take care.
Hey, thanks for having me.
One.
Puck short.
Well, that about wraps it up for this week's show. Thanks again to Dave for joining me to talk about the Friendship 4 tournament and the NCAA in general. Tripping over my words again. Not a good week for me. You can follow me on Twitter @RobMcGregor35. You can follow the blog, onepuckshort.wordpress.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/onepuckshort. If you've got a question or a comment or anything you'd like to say about the show, or just anything in the hockey world in general we want to get off your chest, you can email onepuckshort@gmail.com. Of course, if you're not already a subscriber on iTunes, you can subscribe on iTunes, you can find us on Spreaker, and recent episodes are also now on SoundCloud, depending on how you're listening now, how you prefer to listen, yada yada yada. Some of you may have already seen on the web page, or on the blog, should I say, there is a link to PayPal now, a donations link. As I've sort of said before, it's purely there for those who want to donate and help support the site and the podcast. Nothing's going to change from my end of things. It's just sort of help cover those things like hosting costs and so forth. There's also an Amazon affiliate link, so for your Christmas shopping and so forth, if you just click the link, you then browse Amazon in the normal way. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but we get a little kickback from Amazon for the trouble, which again, it goes towards equipment, hosting, all that sort of thing. So, just for those of you who want to support the show, it's always very much appreciated. Thanks again for listening. and I will speak to you all again very soon.